Hi, this is Tim. Yes, I'm calling about the warehouse that I was going to rent from your space. The biggest one. The biggest one you can find. Yeah, it's gonna be really over the top. It's gonna be like the craziest video I've ever done. We do have coffee scheduled, yeah, for morning. No, not just that, like 8, 10, like every hour. If you can have a refill on those, that'd be great. Yeah, we're gonna need everything, you name it. Fog lights, sliders, gimbals. Well, it's for a product? Yeah, it's a board game? Hello? 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 And where did I put that? Where the heck, where the flip did I put that box? What the Okay, zero creepiness involved for sure. This is not weird at all. What? How about we just... Hello and welcome back to the Wolfpack. Today we're talking about a game that I am incredibly excited about. This matte black cover is showing you the game called Final Girl. And this is a solo only game, but if you are not a solo gamer, stick around because trust me, this may be the first solo game that you might be interested in. It's a really good one. Now first off, if you're new to the channel and you like a modern take on board gaming, if you like the cinematics that I put on board gaming stuff, visuals, then please subscribe down below. It takes 2 seconds for you to support me and for us to all grow together. Check this out. You know how in every scary movie, the wise decision is to run away from said problem and avoid what's creepy and dark and just ominous lurking in the corner? Well, we are going to be the ones, the main characters in this story, that are going towards what we should be avoiding. That is what Final Girl is about. It's a scary movie, that's what we are doing. This game is like a spin on classic horror films. Now, I love scary movies, 100%, but I do not like collecting scary themed items. Does that make sense? It's like, you enjoy the thrill, the adrenaline rush, and like the reactions of people sitting next to you watching a scary movie with you, but I don't like to collect scary looking things because it's creepy, right? But this is an exclusive exception to that rule. Let me tell you why. Now in Final Girl, you're playing as the last remaining character, the smartest one, the wisest one, the most ambitious and strongest one who is out there trying to save everyone else from making very poor decisions. There are a ton of main characters that you have to choose from. They all have their own ultimate abilities that you can unlock throughout the game. Now your goal has a little twist to it depending on the types of villains that you face, but for the most part, you're gonna be fighting against a villain and your goal is to knock them down to 0 health, defeat them before they kill you. Now this is a hand management game. What that means is you're gonna be starting off with a set of cards and you're gonna be building it up because it's also a tableau builder. So you'll be starting off with an array of cards, a display of cards that you can also build onto your hand every turn. So that's how you start off your turn. So for example, if I were to play walk, I'm gonna roll 2 dice because currently on this horror track, which keeps track of how many dice that you have currently, depending on how strong the horror is for you when you're playing against a villain. So if your horror track starts at 4, then I start off with 2 dice. If I were to decrease the horror track and get all the way down to 1, then it would have 3 dice. Bottom line, every time you play a card, you're gonna roll dice to see what happens. So for the roll, I got 1 hit, and I also have another one that says, for this 3 here, it says 2 cards listed, which means I can in turn discard 2 cards in order for that to count as a success. When that does happen, the more successes that you have, then the stronger that the card that you play is. So for walk, it will allow me to move 2 spaces instead of just 1 space. So with those 2 spaces, I'm gonna pick up some victims. I'm gonna move them over to a different part of the map towards the exit because when you say victims, you can actually place them onto your hero. In this case, I'm playing with Asami as the final girl, and I'm gonna take that meeple and place it on my card, which allows me to gain a specific benefit. For this one, I'll take this one, which allows me to decrease the horror track by 2, getting me 1 step closer to the 3 dice. Okay, so victims that you save will end up adding up to your ultimate power. Every final girl has a different ultimate ability. And then from there, your goal is to pretty much just survive. So you're just gonna keep playing action cards until either you run out of time. So your blue marker here, you have an entire track starting off with 6 every round. When you use up different cards, they'll decrease the amount of time that you have, which is 1 currency that you use. Once that drops down to 0, or whenever you decide to stop your turn, then you move on to the next phase. So I can walk, and then I can use focus for an example for my next action. Roll dice again, I got 1 hit, which means here that I'm going to decrease the horde track again by 1, which means I also gain another die for my dice pool. Lastly, let's say I wrap up my turn by playing short rest, since I only have 1 health here. So now I get to roll 3 dice, and 1 success, 2 successes, 1 miss. So with 2 successes, this allows me to recover 2 health for this short rest. From there, I gain 2 more health markers with a maximum total for Asami being 5. Now here's where your decision making is really interesting, because after you finish all your actions, you then start to build up your tableau, your display of cards, or whatever cards you want to have in your hand next. You have 2 rows of cards next to you that I'll pop on the screen here. At the end of your action phase, you can discard cards. And why that matters is because when you discard cards, you can actually increase your time resource, which allows you to buy either more cards and or stronger cards. For instance, I'm a very reckless player, I'm a very offensive player, so what I'm gonna do is actually just not use any cards at all, save up 6 time, use that entire set of resources, so 6 time in order to buy Critical Blow. Now this card does 3 damage if I were to roll 2 successes, because I just want to do some massive damage to Geppetto. This card gets added to my hand. Any other cards that I did use that turn will end up being discarded. I won't be able to use them until the next turn, and that's really, really important, because with your starting hand of 6 cards, they are free cards. But when you use them once on 1 turn, you have to wait and use them on your next turn. So essentially, you can only use a card every other turn. So I'm playing my cards, I'm moving around the board, I'm saving victims, I'm trying to upgrade my ultimate abilities, I'm attacking the villain as much as I can. There are a ton of things that you're doing in your turn. And then from there, the villain is then going to take their turn after you build your tableau. They're gonna draw a terror card. Bunch of bad events happen. Every time your villains kill victims, they level up as well. They increase their bloodlust, which is going to make them faster. It's also gonna make them a lot stronger. They're also gonna gain different abilities like a dark power. They're also going to trigger different events, which again are typically bad for you as well. Last couple summaries I want you to know about this game is that after the villain attacks you, if they are with victims in that space, your victims are gonna panic, which means they're just gonna run all over the place. They're not the smartest people, so they're going to run all over the place. It causes this huge chaos, and they just go in different directions depending on which die that you roll. There are little numbers around the map that will tell you where the victims are going to run to. Obviously, as the game progresses, each villain is going to gain massively, almost exponentially stronger abilities, until the point where if you have no more of these tarot cards, they're gonna trigger their finale, their final ability. In this case, Geppetto has something called No Strings Attached. This villain summons different puppets. Every single turn, he summons a new puppet. They're like little minions that you have to attack too, because they will kill victims. There are no strings on them. Strings. Last thing I also forgot to mention during your turn, you can also go to different parts of the map where you can search for different items. Items will essentially power you up as well. That is a quick gist of what Final Girl is. There is so much happening in this game in this little tiny episode-like box. So there are 4 things that I love about this game, hands down love about this game, but there's also one minor thing I kind of don't like about this game. So let's start off first with what I really love about this game. When we as in board game reviewers, when reviewers or just people in general, when they say that a game is thematic, typically it involves like a combination, right? It involves a combination of us imagining things and the game leading us towards that point. This game, Final Girl, I feel like hits a point where it really just escalates that. It really elevates what it means for a game to be thematic. Let me explain. For one of the boxes, it's the Poltergeist, the one I was playing around with in the beginning of the video. In this Poltergeist expansion, this villain has a really crazy ability where she like screams. Oh, here we go. It's called Something is Coming Through the Wall. So what happens here is that victims panic, and like I mentioned earlier, when victims panic, they're going to run all over the place. And here when it says all victims panic, any victims that exit through a window are killed. It is insane. Like, to come up with that kind of mechanic, like obviously this is a mature theme, but it's just so immersive. Like the fact that these little meeples are running out of the window and they're getting, killed by this ghost that is haunting this house, and you're trying to like save people while also trying to find different victims. In one of the missions, you're actually trying to find a little girl in the attic, save her along with a doll. I don't think that's a spoiler because it's part of the scenario, it's part of the campaign to like even set it up. So obviously when I say that it's cool, I mean like the story and like the game itself, that idea behind how it's making the mechanisms so thematic is crazy cool. All these cars are named based on a dialogue, and I feel like it really adds to the story, the theatrical elements of the game, and I love that. It's so fulfilling to see because, like I said, I love scary movies, and I feel like I'm actually, even though I don't want to be in one, it's a hypothetical sense of being in a scary movie, and I feel like you really get that satisfaction by playing Final Girl. Number 2, now speaking of a scary movie, in scary movies you can't really predict what's happening. If you can, it doesn't make for a very interesting story. If you know exactly what's gonna happen, if you can predict the scares, it's not a fun watch. Every single turn, you are literally rolling dice, and if you don't like that, then I probably wouldn't recommend Final Girl to you because you're doing that every single turn. For me, I love that. Like I don't mind dice rolling. I think it depends on the game too, but here I love it because it makes sense to the story. You can't predict what's going on in a scary movie. You don't know what's gonna happen. Everything is a surprise. And I feel like that theatrical element to it, it gets like the dice rolling, the randomization to that adds to the whole storyline behind it. So I don't mind it. Now with that said, it brings me to point number 3, which is that it is a very difficult game. It's not gonna be for everyone because of the dice rolling, all the push your luck elements in this game. And on top of that, it's very, very rare to win. Out of 7 games that I've played, I've lost every single game to the first scenario that was going through. I think it was with Hans. Yeah, so with Hans, I played against Hans 5 times and I cannot beat him at all. And it was very, very frustrating. I'm gonna get to that point in a second, but either way, if you're playing this game, I wouldn't recommend playing Hans first. I actually, like, he's on the core box, the core cover of Final Girl. Why is this villain the most recommended one to play with first when he's like probably the most difficult one to face so far? Even out of those 7 games that I played, the 2 wins that I had, 1 win against Geppetto and 1 win against the Poltergeist, they were the most satisfying, most incredible, victorious victories that I've ever felt. Like when I won against them, it was so close. It was by the skin of my teeth that I won. I had 1 to 2 health left remaining. Each villain's finale was revealed by then, and I barely pulled through and won. So close. Like for this one that I'm showing you, the one that's on the table right now, I left it since last night because I was so engrossed in this game. I was so immersed in this game. I started this game at midnight last night, and I honestly didn't lift my head. I didn't even know what time it was. When I checked the time on my phone, it was 3 a.m. How fitting for a game like this. But 3 a.m. is when I finished the game, and I realized like I was just so lost in time. And it's been a long time since the game has like gotten me to reach that point where I just kind of forget about everything. But it's crazy. That's how good this game is. So when I was playing against Geppetto, there was one point where he had like 2-3 health left, and I needed to roll 2 criticals. I rolled those 2 criticals, got those last hits, and barely survived because if I couldn't go to next turn, his puppets would have killed me, he would have killed me, and I had like nothing left remaining. So with that said, I feel like this game reverses everything. Typically when people say like, oh, you focused on the good, but you remember that one bad, in this case, you have so many bads that you remember that one good. And it's not bad as in like, this game's not fun. No, bad as in like you lose. Or bad as in like it's frustrating for you to not get the rolls that you want and to completely be destroyed in the game. But it makes you want to play again and to strategize differently and try different tactics and you play around with different characters and different villains, and that is what is really satisfying for me. So overall, those wins are what really pull this game through and makes the game that much more fun. Like that victory is just, If it wasn't 3 a.m., I would have seriously been running around this table screaming like, yes, victorious! So here are the last 2 things I want to mention about this game. First off, here's one thing I don't really like. I know I just mentioned how much I love the difficulty and how satisfying it is to win, but at the same time, I feel like this game is dancing between too difficult and a satisfying victory, like almost perfect difficulty level. If it just cranked down the difficulty, especially in the dice rolls, like if it were to, the 3 and 4 dice rolls, if you roll 3 and 4, you have a choice. You can discard 2 cards in order to make it a success. If it just made it so that way you discarded 1 card, I would be okay with that. And I feel like that would really make the experience not as punishing. There's a ton of layers going on in terms of difficulty. The villain gets progressively stronger. They're going to unlock different abilities. They're going to trigger events. They even have minions sometimes. For you, you have to roll dice for every single action. Sometimes you have to even take damage for your own action, depending on what your dice rolls are. You have to pay attention to the horror track. You have to allocate resources accordingly, or else your dice rolls are going to get progressively worse. And you have to maintain that throughout the game. All the cards in your hand, you can only play once, and then you have to wait, and then you can play it again on a second turn following that. So with the hand management being so limiting, and your movement also, you can only move like 2 spaces typically, unless you sprint. You can move to 3 if you get lucky, rolling 2 criticals. So all those layers added together makes the difficulty almost too frustrating. If the game just toned down the difficulty just 1 notch, I think it would be perfect. Like on the back of this track, there's already an extreme horror option as well. So instead of increasing the difficulty when you already have that there, why not like have an option to decrease it as well? And the last thing I want to mention why I really love this game is that when you mix and match, it's not a simple like substitute your character and substitute villain and just play. No, there's just so many different variables that change. It makes every game really truly different. The setup is different where you place your victims. They also are like I said, they're still true to the story. Like for this one, it says no laughing matter, and it places Geppetto in like the clown car. So they're like little nuances like that, little details that I just love. And that changes. The items that you use per game changes if you play it with the scenario book, like shown here. If you play with this book, it will give you a whole range of scenarios and stories that you can play through as well, which gives you different conditions, different cards that you set up with for the story that you're playing. Some Final Girls will like specialize in taking on a specific villain, and I'm okay with that. It's like Iron Man taking on Ultron for that instance. You can even change the map that you're playing on, because the one I played was Ghost Hunters, where she started with Creech Manor, and instead, if she plays at the camp, the scenario will be called Chaos at the Camp. For that one, you have a different Final Girl, you have a different setup, different items, events, and you're playing with, like I said, the different map with all those cards associated with that map. So it's not just a simple mix and match, like substitute this character with a villain. No, there are just so many other variables that accompany that setup. And I love that, because then you can play with every single episode, and it makes you want every episode, which is why I wanted to play this game before going into season 2 to know whether or not I want to back to season 2. Spoiler alert, you obviously know the answer by now. I'm definitely going to back season 2 before the campaign is over, which I think is about 2-3 days out from the time of this recording. As always, this is not a sponsored review, just my genuine love for how good this game is. So with that, let's wrap up and summarize today's review. This game full on takes theme to a whole other level. Randomization is such a pivotal core to the game. You're in a scary movie, so of course everything's going to be unpredictable, and I love that. Wins are extremely satisfying when you can actually pull them off. Mixing and matching adds a ton of variability and replayability to this game. It's flexible, so you can set up your own different scenarios, or you can also follow the ones given to you in the scenario booklet. The one downside to this game I feel like is just hand management maybe is a little bit too punishing, or rather the dice can be toned down so that way you discard 1 card instead of 2, because overall I feel like the difficulty is just dancing around, too difficult versus a satisfying win. Final Girl gets a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It is so freaking good. If you've never played solo games, I highly recommend this game. Once again, making sure that you are aware that you are rolling dice, you are pushing your luck in this game, and that is also very difficult. Probably not too beginner friendly either. But beyond that, I try to get past the honeymoon phase of every review that I do. Going past, you know, I was supposed to go to like 3 games. I played 7 of this one just to make sure I'm covering at least a good range of it. The only 2 I haven't played yet are these 2 and the mystery boxes that have come through. But it's just a really incredible solo experience. I love this game so much. If you've seen my top 10 list, Marvel Champions was way up there. It was actually my #1 solo game in that list. But I feel like Final Girl is easily giving Marvel Champions a run for its money at this point. I would love to make a top 5, top 10 solo list. If that's something you want to see, let me know down in the comments below. But also, let me know your thoughts about Final Girl too. I want to know what you think about this game, and if you're thinking about backing the campaign or late pledging, maybe at the time you see this video later on. But either way, such an incredible game. What a unique experience, and it's just matte black on matte black. I can't complain about that either. But yeah, I'm not a big solo gamer. I actually got into solo gaming maybe like last year, and this one really pushes me down the path to solo gaming a lot more with how good it really is. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed this review. Thank you for joining me once again on another review, and I will see you all in the next video.